Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. My name's Colin Watt, and I'm joined today by Liam Carrigan. Liam, welcome. We're slightly late there, a couple of technical issues, but we managed to get that resolved. How are you today?
Sorry, guys, I just had to fly around the world a couple of times, and then... Anyway.
All good.
It is exactly 13 hours until I'm going to see the new Superman film, and I am getting very excited.
It's probably the only time you'll be allowed to wear red and blue on this podcast and maybe avoid the abuse. We are looking forward to the weekend. It is Thursday. Do you know, it feels like Friday. I'm off work today. I'm headed over to Dublin this weekend. And it feels as if it's Friday already. So I've got that Friday feeling. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, a lot to discuss in the last 24 hours in terms of Celtic. We'll take a look back at the Cork City game on Tuesday night, get Liam's thoughts on that performance. We'll also talk about the potential incoming new signing, or it looks as if the imminent new signing of Shin Yamada from Kawasaki Frontale. He's currently with the Japan national team. We'll look at that in a minute. We've got a video that we can show as Liam gives us his full in-depth analysis on Shin Yamada, something that I know, Liam, you've already shared with us. We'll also look at the signing potentially of Mikael Ange Balakishwa, how far that's progressing, some of the outs as well. We'll take a look at the depth chart for this season ahead, and we'll also discuss the new pilot scheme that is taking place in Scottish football starting this weekend, involving 7 of the clubs in the Premier Sports Cup. Where they will be able to sell alcohol in the stadium for the first time since the 1980s. So there's a lot to discuss and see whether Celtic can get involved in that. But first, I dare mention this, Liam, but this is a dark day in the history of Scottish football. The 10th of July, 1989, Judas Day, the day that Maurice Johnson decided that Celtic wasn't his team, that he was going to the dark side.
The supervillain so vile that Lex Luthor has his poster up on his wall.
It's, I mean, I wasn't born then, but the reaction to that day must have been... Can you imagine if there was social media the day that Maurice Johnson signed for Rangers?
He's lucky there was no GPS that day. He'd have been hunted. No, I was actually living in Torquay at the time, down south in England. But my dad certainly had plenty of thoughts about it, and I do remember I was only I'd have been 5 at that point. Because actually that was a month before, you could say a month before I first became really a Celtic supporter. It's a month, it was August 6th, so just under a month later, 1989. It's the first time I went to Celtic Park. And our tour guide was the legendary Stevie Chalmers, and a nicer man you couldn't hope to meet. And it was really, that was it. That was the day I became a Celtic supporter. Stevie Chalmers sold me on what it was all about, getting shown around Celtic Park, even in 1989 when it was still the old stadium, whatever. I thought, aye. So, 5-year-old me was like, this will do. I'm now a Celtic fan.
Just bringing up the comment here from JJI. You weren't even born in 89. I was not. I was born in 1993. I hope that hasn't aged you too much, JJ. But please do get in your comments. Give us your thoughts. Imagine what social media would have been like that day. Give us an insight to what it would have been like. And give us your thoughts on any of the topics coming up. We are going to go through them all. If you do want to contribute to the channel, you can, as someone did on Tuesday, submit a super chat, and that will definitely get your statement read on the air. It doesn't have to be as generous as the one on Tuesday, but feel free to get involved. We're going to take a look back now to the performance on Tuesday against Cork City, Liam. We'll briefly touch on it. It wasn't really much to shout home about. A 2-1 victory, and Cork Super Cup champions, they'll never sing that. That's basically the long and short of how that performance went. Goals from McCowan and Colby Donovan. For me, and I think that's the best place to start, let's talk about Inamura, because only 24 hours before the game, he was basically written off. He was going to be out on loan. He wasn't going to be a first-team regular. He comes in, and it almost was as if that 25 jersey was made for him. He slotted in really well at left back, a position he doesn't normally play in.
I mean, it's not like me to be smug, but I did say this boy was a player. I did say he was a player. He's a raw talent, but he's definitely a talent. And look, it's against Cork City, League of Ireland team who, with the greatest respect, are struggling in the League of Ireland at the moment.
Yep.
But, they are in the middle of their season, so they're much further ahead in terms of fitness than we are. Although, he should also, Inamura should also be fully fit because he was playing up until 2 weeks ago. So it really is it's a great debut, and I really hope he can build on it. He's got the next 3 weeks or whatever to prove that he's worthy of being KT's backup. And I think he can do it. I really believe he can do it. It's funny because we're going to get on to talk about Yamada later on. And Yamada, of the two, was actually the one that I found more exciting in terms of coming to Celtic. But having seen Inamura just that 45 minutes, I like what I saw. I'm optimistic about what comes next.
Yeah, you're not the only one that was impressed with what they saw. Obviously, you heard Brendan Rodgers' thoughts after the game, saying that he'll definitely be getting more game time as the pre-season continues. And that's what pre-season's for, is to give guys a bit of game time, as you say. He's obviously been fit, having basically played, what is that, like 2/3 of a season already in Japan. And then came into this. I thought he looked very comfortable at left back, considering he really isn't a natural left back. His passing range was very good. He was very comfortable on the ball. As you say, you've got to take the opposition into account, but you can only play what's in front of you. And considering it was his first 45 minutes, and to throw a klaxon in here, Dewey was discarded after 45 minutes, and that's kind of the level that some people were thinking Inamura was going to come in at, and he's definitely proven that if he continues at this rate, there's probably a space for him at the club this season.
But I mean, that's the thing. I actually wrote a blatant self-promotion. I wrote a blog yesterday actually talking about, do we write off certain players too quickly? Because, Kobayashi done after 6 games. Lagerbielke done after 10 games. Navrowski got 18 games in total. Now, are any of those 3 ultimately good enough to play for Celtic? Probably not. But is it really fair to judge a guy after 6 games or 10 games? I reckon you need at least double that before you can make any kind of judgment. And I would say that all 3 of those guys ultimately were probably not Celtic class, but they didn't get the chance to show that they could have been Celtic class.
Yeah.
I hope Inamura does get that chance.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. I completely agree with you. Someone, was it Jim Orr, I think, said that you've got the 900-minute test. You give someone 900 minutes and then you can make the appearance and make a decision on whether they have a place in the squad or not. And obviously, as we said, the first 45 minutes has went very well for him. And we'll be excited to see if he gets involved in the games coming up in Portugal, as Celtic are currently in Lisbon doing some training ahead of 2 friendlies with Estrela de Amadora and Sporting Lisbon over the next couple of days. We will be covering those live on Acsom, as you can see going across the bottom just now. But yeah, I don't think the temperature's much warmer in Portugal than what it was in Cork the other day. That looked like an absolutely scorching day. And as I said to you, I'm headed over to Dublin this weekend, and the forecast is in the high 20s, so I'm going to need to dig out the old sun cream.
Well, it was 37 here today, so you get zero sympathy from me, mate.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's fine. We'll move on. As one player looked to have impressed in pre-season, one certainly looked as if his future is not at the club, and that's Stephen Welsh. A bit of a calamity in defence for the Cork equalising goal. A bit of a mix-up between him and Ross Doohan. There's other times as well that he just looked as if he was off the pace. Although he was the captain in the second half, the fact that you're coming on as part of the B team, Dane Murray's clearly ahead of you. I think obviously picked up the injury, but Liam, his time's up. I think he won't be here when the window closes at the end of August.
I mean, For his sake, I hope he's not, because I hope he goes somewhere and plays football and is successful, because it's clear that's not going to be at Celtic. For the sake of his career, he needs to go somewhere. And I really hope that he'll get that move. But the sad thing is, if this injury is going to need surgery, like Brendan Rodgers is saying it might, then he could be out of action until, September, in which case his chance of a transfer is humped.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, I remember when he first broke into the team, he was on loan at Morton, obviously my local home team, and he was playing quite regularly there at right back, actually, for Morton. And a couple of my friends are season ticket holders at Capello, and they were saying he's okay, he's definitely a championship player. And this was at like 18, 19, I think he was. And then all of a sudden we had a bit of a defensive crisis, and he was brought back in to Celtic during the January. I think we were at Hamilton Accies away, and he was basically thrown into the first team. And from that point onwards, he's never been back out. We've turned down several big transfer offers from Italy for him. For me, Liam, he's someone who, if you're looking to have a backup squad player, someone that's going to give you 5 to 10 appearances, whether it be off the bench or in sort of lower league cup ties, he's a guy you can throw in, but he's not someone that can contribute to this squad. And unfortunately, there's just too many of those players in the squad just now. I
do wonder, though, if he might be kept around for the, and I mean no disrespect to the player here, but for what my American friends call the DEI, the representation, the token Scottish presence in the squad that we need for UEFA regulations.
Yep. I think perhaps Dane Murray coming in there is like the automatic replacement for Stephen Welsh. So it's a shame you don't like seeing players kind of leaving under those circumstances, but I'd be very surprised if we saw Stephen Welsh in a Celtic jersey again.
Aye, although I'd like to hear Kev say that, in which case he'll become a superstar,
Well, Kev's in the live chat. We'll see what Kev's got to say. Another player that we got to see for the first time on Tuesday was Callum Osmond. He looked pretty sharp, Liam. He had a bit of a good first touch on him. Poor finish when he got put through, but he looked lively and he was getting himself involved. Interested to see how he continues to develop through pre-season.
Aye, I liked his confidence. I like the fact that he had that bad miss, but he didn't let it get to him. He kept going, kept asking for the ball, kept making the runs. No, he's making all the right noises. I think he'll do all right. I hope actually that he will be someone who gets a game for the first team now and again and is not punted out to the B team, because going to the B team would ruin him, because it's far, far below the level that he's obviously capable of playing at.
Yeah, he looks as though he's not someone who's an out-and-out number 9. He's not someone who's going to pick the ball up, hold it up, interlink, with the other players. He's someone who, from what I saw, he dropped deep, made a lot of good runs in behind as well. I think that suits more the style of football that Rodgers is trying to play. He tried to get Kyogo to do that, certainly, since he came in, and it wasn't really working for him, but when it did work, it was magical. I'm just thinking back to the goal he scored against Rangers at Celtic Park, where he dropped in and then stuck one in the top bag. I'm not saying Callum Osmond is going to be up to that level, but that's the kind of striker that Rodgers likes to see at Celtic.
Aye, absolutely. Very early days, but he looks like he's going to have something to say next season, and I'm excited to see what impact he has on the squad.
Yeah, overall, I think it was a decent exercise, a trophy which will be probably a pub quiz question in years to come, and a chance for some of the Irish Celts to go and see the team, although you're probably looking at getting a loan out to get some of those tickets. I heard the prices of those tickets, it was extortionate, so fair play to anyone that coughed that up.
Well, shout out to my friend Shane from Celtic Down Under, who surprised us all by telling us on Monday that he was in Cork and he was going to the game.
Wow. So you need to find out what costs more, his flight ticket or his match ticket, because I think it would have been pretty closely matched.
Well, the thing is, he was going to see Oasis as well, so I mean, he's probably done his whole mortgage between.
He's remortgaged the house for that one. We are 900 strong as we go through this Thursday lunchtime. I'm going to go through some of the comments that we've brought back up. So Gordon Coney come in. Good afternoon, Acsom. Are the board prepared to back Rodgers in this season of uncertainty on his own future? Tierney, Negrin and maybe Osmond aside, the players coming in don't seem to be Brendan's picks. We'll touch back on that in a second. Tony Ratton comes in and says, brilliant crack in the Rebel City. Great to meet so many of the Celtic family. If you haven't been to Cork before, I highly recommend it. A couple of my family have actually travelled out of Cork before quite regularly. And they say it's a great place, and I'm sure everybody seemed to have a great time. John Mullane, no JP Thursday. I don't like change. I'm really sorry to hear that. It'll be good to hear Liam's thoughts on Yamada. We're going to touch on that in 2 seconds. Just as Liam Devine comes in to say, Shin Yamada, I don't get it. Well,
hopefully you will in a minute, Liam. Bear with me.
What we're going to do now, we're going to play a video just as Liam takes us through his thoughts on Shin Yamada. It's just a highlight video from his time at Kawasaki. It'll be muted. There'll be no noise in the background. Audio listeners, I do apologise, but you will hear Liam's dulcet tones in a second. Everyone that's watching on YouTube, you'll get a chance to see Yamada in action. So let's bring position, and we've not really got a 10 position in the team. We've got 3 midfielders who are all sort of interchangeable. Normally it's McGregor, Engels and Hatate, and Hatate's usually the one that's kind of the more further forward out of the 3 of them. But if you've got that sort of 10 role in there, that could be somewhere where Nygren or Negrin, however the pronunciation is, could fit into that role. And it ties in again with what Brendan Rodgers was saying the other day after the game. He was saying that there's still irons in the fire. He's still looking to bring in players, and it's predominantly in the forward line. He needs to freshen up the forward line. And obviously, we've got the injury to Jota, and that's a big loss to the team. But he'll be back in January, and we're not saying he's going to hit the ground running, but you wouldn't look at bringing in a replacement for Jota, considering he's only in the door 6 months. So it is clearly something where Rodgers is looking at maybe there'll be more positions for the front 3/4 next season, and we need to strengthen the depth that we've got there.
But I think my take on the Jota situation, and I see Plunge in the comments agrees with me, is that Dyson's going out to the left until Jota's fit. I think that's what happens. Dyson's on the left, and then Ida or AN other is playing through the middle until Jota comes back. Then we can review that. Dyson is one of those guys that he will do whatever he has to do for the team. Because the funny thing is, he was always a striker until he came to Celtic. Then he became a left winger because of his pace. And now Japan actually tend to play him in a wide role as opposed to the main striker, which is where he used to play. So his form as a winger at Celtic has actually led the Japan national team to reassess where they deploy him. So to me, Dyson is and always will be a striker. That was how I first saw him play, 6 years ago. And that is how I see him. But if the most effective thing for the team is to deploy him as a winger, then that could well be what happens.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Yamada, it looks as if he's not going to be joining us until the end of... Is that like a sort of Nations League tournament that's happening just now over there? It's just kind of a B-team tournament?
But no, it's not a B-team tournament for the other teams, but it is basically a B-team tournament for Japan. See, basically what it is, it's the East Asian Championships, a 4-team tournament. It's kind of like if you think of what the old Home Nations tournament you used to get, right? It's South Korea, China, Hong Kong, and Japan. Taiwan want to play in it, but China threw a tantrum about that, so that didn't happen. So yeah, it's this 4-team tournament, and they do it. I can't remember if it's every year or every 2 years, but the general agreement is that Hong Kong and China both play the full-strength squad, whereas Korea and Japan tend to play domestic league only players to make it fair. Because obviously Korea and Japan are on a different level to China and Hong Kong. So that at least makes it, in theory, competitive. But as you can see for the 6-1 scoreline the other night, Hong Kong are still miles away from Japan's level.
And Yamada played 45 minutes in that game. He came off the bench. That was his sort of Japan debut.
Yep. Aye. As I said, he was really disappointed that he didn't score. But it's a bounce game against a team of semi-professionals. I wouldn't take it to heart. If he plays against Rangers and has a shocker, then he can be angry with himself. But I think that's just a bit of Japanese pride, maybe going into overdrive a wee bit there.
Definitely. So yeah, the 15th of July that tournament ends, and the belief is that he will then make his way to London to have a medical. It seems to be where we do a lot of our international medicals now before joining up with the team, who will be still in Portugal at that point. I think they'll have just played Sporting Lisbon, or just about to play Sporting Lisbon, before the game against Newcastle at home next Saturday. So it'll be interesting to see if Yamada is involved in that. As we say, Inamura came in because he was halfway through the season. Yamada's the same. So there's every chance that we could see him getting a couple of minutes. And he's coming from good pedigree, Liam. He's coming from Kawasaki Frontale, who was Rio Hitate's old team as well. So an old teammate of Rio's?
Yeah, they are. I don't know if they ever actually played together. I'm not sure if them, because, let me see. They would have, because it was... No, wait a minute. 2022. No, Rio would have been the year before, because it was 2022 January when we signed him. And Yamada started playing for them 2022, later that same season. So they would have just missed each other by about 3 months.
Okay, so we'll see how...
The season in Japan runs March to November. So basically, Rio finished up November 2021. Sorry, November 2021. Joined Celtic January 2022. And then Yamada joined Kawasaki's first team in March of 2022 with the start of that following season. So they missed each other by a few months.
Well, let's hope they're not passing each other again as Yamada comes in. Hopefully we get to keep Rio this time.
They probably know each other, though. They probably trained together, because I think Yamada was part of Kawasaki's youth setup before that. And the youth team does train with the senior team from time to time. So I'd imagine that they're probably on a first name basis. So,
and what's quite interesting is I saw Daisen Maeda do this, and I think we saw Kyogo and Rio do it as well. A lot of these players go back to their old teams during the sort of Scottish pre-season and link up. They always seem to have very close relationships with the last J-League team that they were with. So as I say, I'm pretty sure they've probably trained together. So a friendly face around the Lennoxtown changing room.
Just to touch a wee bit on that, the reason why they do that is also the reason why we are getting Yamada for only 1.6 million, right? Basically, when a player is judged good enough to move to Europe, the Japanese club don't stand in the way. You notice that whenever Celtic have expressed interest in a Japanese player in the J-League, we usually get the deal over the line pretty quickly. There is no protracted negotiation, because it's like, okay, this is your chance to go to Europe. Best of luck, mate. Go for it. And that's what happens. So that is why when the players in the off-season, they go back to Japan, they visit these smaller clubs, because now, of course, they've gone to Europe. They've become big, high-profile players. It's not just Celtic players. You get likes of Kubo, who was at Real Madrid, is now at Real Sociedad. He's done it. Minamino, formerly of Liverpool, now I think Monaco, he did it as well. They go back and they thank these smaller clubs for giving them that chance by not being, not demanding ridiculous money and letting them go to Europe and to fulfill their dream. So it's a wee bit of payback,
It's very nice. Moving on, with one more sort of iron that we can see that's in the works just now, and that is Michel-Ange Balakishwa. We've mentioned him almost to death here on Acsom. The report yesterday is that he was absent from training. Some people were saying it was an injury, but the insight from the Belgian newspapers is that it's because of the transfer negotiations that are ongoing just now. Sporting's director, Mark Overmars, there's a name from the past. He is the person that has been dealing with the negotiations for Balakishwa from Antwerp. I think this is one that looks as if it's probably going to get done, Liam. It's an area of the park we are looking to strengthen, as Rogers mentioned before. a lot of people have their concerns with the injuries that he's picked up, but I think you're always going to get that from an explosive player. They're always going to have muscle injuries. If you look at his injury history, it is to do with that. And what we're looking for is to add depth to the squad. So if we can manage that with the sports science team and the physios and everything else that we've got here at Celtic, then for the price that we're looking at here, about £3.5 million, I think it could be a good signing.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good signing. And I wouldn't read too much into past injury problems because every player can have those, right? Kieran Tierney had them and we still sign him with no hesitation, right? Sometimes players actually, if they're coming off the back of a bad injury, they need a fresh move to a new club to kind of get that impetus back. Something I like about Balikwisha, I was reading an interview with him the other day, and this was back in, I think it was January, when he was coming back from the injury that basically scuppered him from moving to Celtic last summer.
Mm-hmm.
He was asked, like, oh, it's January, the transfer window's open. Is there any chance you'll go to Celtic now? And he basically said, look, don't talk to me about transfers. He said, my first job is to get fit, to get back playing at the top level, and to show the form that earned me that attention in the first place. And I thought, that'll do for me. That's the right attitude. That's what I want to see at Celtic. He fits the bill.
That's what you're looking for. You're looking for players that, although they're sort of selfish mindset in that sense, Liam, and like he's focusing on himself. He's not focusing on. I mean, Antwerp fans probably weren't overly happy at that response because they know he's working to get himself a move. But if he's someone that gives 100% whilst he's in that mindset, I don't think you can grudge anybody that. Celtic are a team that bring in players, and if you look at our track record over the last 15, 20 years, the amount of players we've brought in for round about that price mark and then moved on is quite high. And that's just the way modern football is. Unfortunately, we don't get players like Nicholas Kuhn staying for 3 to 5 seasons. We don't get players. I mean, you get to a certain point, and I remember it was about a couple of years ago now when Celtic had the Celtic Festival that took place at the SECC. And one of the people that was interviewed that day was Peter Lawwell. And it's one of the very few times that Peter Lawwell's actually been on a podcast. I know he was on the E-Tims podcast a couple of years ago. But he was interviewed by Jerry McCulloch, and obviously very washed questions. Yeah, very washed questions. But surprisingly, Lawwell was actually quite forthcoming. Someone asked a question around the contracts that Celtic were doing. So it was sort of, at this point, it was 4. Now we've sort of moved on to the 5-year contracts that we're doing. We're not quite at the Chelsea level where we're handing out 8-year contracts left, right, and centre, but most players that sign will sign on a 4 or 5-year deal. Lawwell said that the first 2 years of that contract, you're hoping that the player gives absolutely everything and that they start to attract attention from clubs that can pay more money. He was very clever and didn't say bigger clubs, because when you're in a room full of Celtic fans and you say bigger clubs, there
is no bigger club.
Exactly, it's not going to go down well. But he said clubs that could pay more money could pay higher wages. And then after that 2-year period, that's when the negotiations start. Are you going to extend your contract for another 2 to 3 seasons? Or is it the point where Celtic go, we need to look at selling this player because they've got to the top of their potential? Now, I don't believe 100% of what he said then, because that would suggest that Celtic have forward planning, and I have not seen that since then.
I know they don't have forward planning because I've seen how they deal with the Japanese market.
It does open an interesting concept, though, that this is clearly what's sold to players when they're coming to Celtic. Everybody knows now, you come in for a season or 2, you play well, are you at the peak of your career, can you develop more? Right, okay, you'll get a new deal. And you see that time and time again, round about this time of the year, as we get towards the end of the window, you'll probably see new contracts, maybe for Daisen Maeda, maybe for a couple of others. I think, was it Rio Hatate re-signed last year up to 2028? Yeah. You'll probably see another couple of those, maybe Carter Vickers, and you'll see that further on in the year. but the players know they're not at Celtic for the long term. And Balakishwa, if he comes in, probably knows that if he has a good season, maybe a good 18 months, there could be interest from down south and he moves on. So, as you say, it's important to get his injuries under control, but he's not someone that's going to be here for 4 to 5 years.
No, and that's the. I mean, it's the same with Inamura as well, right? To me, the question of will he make it a Celtic or will he not? I don't know, right? You ultimately don't know based on 45 minutes against Cork City where he looked decent. But I'll say confidently right now, we will get more than 250,000 for him when he moves on.
Yes.
That's where the investment side of this makes sense. That's why, for example, I think the move for Janssen the other day from Rapid Vienna didn't work out, because for once I actually agree with the Celtic board. I don't think he's worth 9 million. I don't care how good a season you've had, and he had a decent season, not a great season, a decent season in Austria. You don't go from being worth 200,000 to being worth 9 million in a year. That doesn't happen. I don't care what unless you've scored. You've won the Golden Boot and scored 45 goals or something. I don't know. I don't get it. Celtic made an offer of apparently 3.5 million for him.
So did Paris FC, yeah.
Aye, which is the player's market value, right? That is the player's market value based on what he's contributed, what players of a similar ability level have gone for. Because we signed Nicholas Kuhn off the back of a very similar season at Vienna. Mm-hmm. Basically, we made the mistake of showing our hand because we announced that. Well, we didn't announce it, but we let it be known that Kuhn was moving to Como. And so suddenly Rapid Vienna are like, all right, Celtic have got 17 million in the bank. That 3 million player is now 9 million. And they found somebody daft enough to pay it. So good luck to them. But that's not us. And I'm glad it's not us because he's not worth it.
So the move is that Janssen will be moving to Nice, it looks like, in the Ligue 1. Just while we're on that, I don't know if you saw the news the other day. Lyon avoided the relegation. So that's got huge ramifications across European football this year. Just taking that away from Celtic for a second. But Nice are a team that will spend that kind of money. I'm looking at their transfers from last season, bringing in players from Aston Villa, Marseille, Al Ahly, Colorado Rapids, all around the sort of £5 to £7 million mark. And they've moved on. They moved on Kefren Turam to Juventus for 20 million. They are a team that can go and spend that kind of money. We obviously saw what other teams in that league did when the likes of Rennes signed Kyogo Furuhashi last year for £10 million. So that money in French football, that's just a regular signing for them. But for us in Scottish football, we seem to say that it's like £3 to £5 million. That's a top player. And then anything above that, they're rated so highly. It's almost as if we shouldn't have these players in Scottish football. And the way that people have reacted, and we've spoke about this quite a lot, but the way that people have reacted to Arne Engels and his signing last year, it's as if he was the worst player in the world at times when you read some of the comments online. The guy's a good midfielder. He's going to develop further. The £11 million price tag, it's almost as if it's like £11 million in Scottish football. The world's ending.
See, this is where... Now, I'm no fan of the Celtic board, as you know. I think they're far too risk-averse. We should have... David Murray talked last week about, Celtic tried to bury us. No, they didn't, but they should have. Right? We should have built on things 10 years ago and absolutely buried them completely, but we didn't, because we were happy to just be that wee bit ahead of a club called Rangers. But what I will say for the board is I think you look now at some of the signings we're doing now, they are getting savvy for how to suss out these cheaper deals for decent players. I mean, the whole thing with Nygren got into the last 6 months of his contract. So we get a player who's probably worth 7 or 8 million for 1.5, right? There's a similar clause apparently with this French player, Etienne, that we're meant to be in for. He is also moving into the last year of his deal. So he's going to be about, if we go for him, he'll be about 3 million as opposed to about 8 or 9 million. Just a guy who played for Inter Milan, he's no a diddy.
just to interrupt you on that, every single player that we've been linked with this year has 12 months left on his contract. It's almost as if Paul Tisdale's playing Football Manager and he's got the filter on the last 12 months of his contract. It is.
You know, it could be a data thing. I mean, Tisdale said himself in this mysterious presentation that we all know, but none of us have ever seen, that data was one of the things he was really wanting to get into at Celtic. And maybe that's it. He's like, okay, who do we know that's good, that's going to be available cheap because their contracts are running out? And if that's our strategy for the summer, then great. If it brings us more players like Nigren, I'm all for it.
I'll be interested to see if that trend continues as we go through the summer, because, as we say, it's only the 10th of July. We've brought in 5, almost 6 players now when Yamada joins. However many of them will be part of the first team, we'll look to see, and we'll see if any of the incoming rumours involve players in the last 12 months of their contract. Probably you could go on to Football Manager right now, look at who's got 12 months left on their contract and start a rumour, and it would probably end up in one of the papers later on with all the AI nonsense that they run.
Well, you know, jokes aside, I actually did that a couple of months ago. I don't know if I told you this. I don't know if I told the listeners this, but if you go back and look on the Acsom blog, a couple of months ago, there was a story I wrote called Kyogo coming back, a Kyogo Celtic return. Stranger things have happened, right? Now, I wrote this knowing fine well there's no chance Kyogo was going to come back to Celtic, right? But I had a suspicion that certain mainstream media journalists, I'm not going to name names, certain journalists have been reading the blog and taking it and trying to pass it off as their own work. And funnily enough, that story, a version of it, appeared in the Daily Record the next day and then appeared on Sports Illustrated, based in New York, who were obviously lifting it from the Record. And it was literally something I wrote in about 10 minutes while I was waiting for my dinner that night. So that shows you how quickly these rumours can get started and how quickly they can circulate, right? I wrote a speculative piece about what if, you know, I don't think Kyogo's coming back, but here's how it could happen, to the Record running, Kyogo's available for 3 million, Celtic should jump on it.
I remember being on here maybe just as Ange's first season. And we were talking about a striker because I think Giakoumakis maybe it was the second season, Giakoumakis has just moved on, and we're saying who could come in to replace him. And at that time, there was a player in Belgium who now plays for Southampton, Paul Onuachu, who was scoring goals for fun in Belgium. Big, tall, powerful striker, and he reminded me of Giakoumakis. He could come in and do a job. And I said Celtic should look at signing this player. And I remember maybe a day or two later, someone texted me saying Celtic's going to sign Paul Onuachu. And I went, what? And he says, yeah, Celtic's going to sign Paul Onuachu. And I went, all right. And he says, here's the link to the story. And it was on Yahoo News, and it was what I had said on the podcast a couple of days before. So it's quite interesting to see how that sort of thing works.
I mean, don't buy the Sun. Don't buy the Sun. But if you were going to buy this, if you were going to buy the Sun today, you will read a story that is almost word for word. They're claiming it as breaking news. It's almost word for word something that I wrote on Monday, talking about the timeline for when Yamada is going to sign. I wrote on the blog on Monday of this week that Yamada will not sign until the 15th because of this tournament. And the Sun, and consequently the Record, because they were just copying the Sun, both ran that story today as like a big sort of exclusive breaking news. It's like, aye, guys, you fucking read it in the blog, didn't you? So excuse my language.
It's all right. It's late. You're past the watershed in Japan. It's all good.
Aye.
Interesting point coming in here from Gerard Hackett. What about the youngsters? McArdle, Summers, Donovan. Will they see game time this season? PSG, Liverpool, Barcelona, all producing their own. Why can't we? And obviously we saw some of that on Tuesday's game. Liam, obviously saw the second half team was basically the B team. I was impressed with a couple of players. McArdle, I believe, we're still ironing out the fine details of a new contract for him. And you know what happens when a youngster doesn't sign a contract. If they don't, they get bombed out, and if they do, then they'll be involved. Summers looked good when he came on. I think he's coming back from an injury. last season, and obviously Donovan scored the winner. He looked very good, very composed at centre back. The player I was actually quite impressed with, and I have been over the last 2 games, is Kyle Ewer. I think he's looked very comfortable in the middle of the park. Someone I'd like to see getting some more game time this season, and I think that'll all come down to what the squad depth looks like come the first game of the season, because right now you're looking at quite a weak squad, to be perfectly honest, especially across the back line. We've lost Lagerbielke and Nawrocki, and whilst they weren't first team players, if there was an injury last season, as we saw, obviously Nawrocki came in, but your back line you're looking at just now, we've got Alistair Johnston and Ralston at right back. You've got, oh, by the way, Ralston's due a testimonial this year. That's crazy. You've got Carter Vickers, Trusty Scales, and now Dane Murray as your 4 centre halves. And at left back, you're looking at KT and Inamura. And whilst Rodgers says he wants to strengthen the front line, I think we have to start looking at the back line as well and start bringing in a couple of players. Obviously, we've been linked with Justin De Haas as the centre back, but there's probably a space for another 1 or 2 to give us that depth across all 4 competitions this year, Liam.
I mean, with just purely on the fact that Nawrocki and Lagerbielke have gone, forgetting about quality upgrades for it, we need two centre backs. That's just to purely fill that gap in the personnel. We need 2 centre backs. So De Haas sounds like quite a good. I mean, apparently he's very comfortable in the Portuguese Premier League, not playing for one of the top teams, but doing well. So I think that's good enough to come to Celtic and make an impact. Definitely.
I think Donovan, could be there, but there's also this agreement, as we've spoke about quite a few times, that it looks like it's going to be between Celtic and Queen's Park, where Celtic will be able to send out 5 players on a sort of loan basis, where it can be out with the transfer window. Celtic can recall them. It doesn't count. So I think guys like Donovan, maybe Kyle Ewer, even guys like Thomas Hatton, who I thought played quite well, they might be the ones that we see move out. And we've found out in the last 24 hours that Jude Bonner looks as if he's going to be making a loan move to Scott Brown's Ayr United. And Lenny Agbier, who we've not seen in pre-season at all, we did see him last pre-season, he looks as if he's going to make his way to Rotherham, as Jerry Taylor told us yesterday. So we're starting to see a bit of movement, and I think we will see quite a lot of movement out over the next few weeks, Liam. Once these games are done and we're not really playing the B team players, we'll probably see them start to move out.
The worrying thing is, and this was something that I can't remember, somebody said it on the show during the week. I can't remember who it was. I apologise, but somebody made the point that a lot of these B team players are the same age or older than Arnie Engels, which is kind of worrying.
I think Adam Montgomery's older than him, isn't he?
Aye, yeah. They're at that age now, and they're still realistically nowhere near the first team. Again, I wrote something about this last week, but my opinion is that the B team is a failed experiment. We should, the agreement that we have with Queen's Park, I think we're only allowed to have that agreement with one club in the Championship. I would get another club in League One, or possibly a club down south, and have the same agreement. And I would just put the entirety of our B team out on loan to these teams, because that's a better level of football than they're getting at the moment. Because the main problem for these players is the gap between the, the Lowland League?
Lowland League, yeah.
Aye. The gap between the Lowland League and the Celtic first team is just, it's ridiculous. There's no player in the world could be expected to make that jump. You know, you're playing against civil service strollers one week and Aberdeen the next. What chance have you got? You know?
I think it's the first season or two, I think the B team did struggle in that league. But last year, I think if it wasn't for the fact that East Kilbride won the title, Celtic finished second. And that East Kilbride team's obviously had a lot of investment in it. With obviously Cy Ferry and the boy from Darvel, I've totally forgotten his name, that owns Black Rooster. They're sort of running the joint there, and they're obviously a team that's on the up. But I think you're right. We need to. There's no reserve league, obviously, and everyone would probably prefer to go back to a reserve league, but that's just not there. So these guys need to be playing proper senior first team football, and it has to be full time first team football as well for me.
We would be as well doing. Try to think of a better wording for the example, but like a Harlem Globetrotters kind of thing. Don't play in a league. Just go around and play friendly matches every week. Like, we'll play the Man City B team this week. We'll play Marseille's B team next week. There's enough cheap flights around Europe that you could do it, and it wouldn't cost that much.
Brentford done that.
That would be better.
Yeah, Brentford done that. They sort of came out of the Premier League 2 and they went round and played a lot of those. And I think Rangers actually did it a couple of seasons ago as well. But
Rangers have withdrawn from the Lowland League, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. It's only Celtic and Hearts that remain. Yep.
So they will probably be doing something like that next season.
Yeah. It's obviously an option for the club, but that would mean they'd have to get their thinking caps out, and there's too many thinking caps in the go right now for Celtic. I want to finish up today with a news story that doesn't involve Celtic. We spoke about it earlier on, but it may involve Celtic in the future, and that is the fact that for the Premier Sports Cup this weekend, there are 7 clubs being involved in a pilot scheme which will introduce alcohol back into the stadiums. Now, obviously, there hasn't been alcohol since, is it the 1990 Scottish Cup
1980.
final? 1980 Scottish Cup final. Obviously, before either of our times, as we've highlighted earlier.
My dad was there. He told me it was quite a day.
that shows you how long ago it's been. 7 clubs involved in it. They've not named all of them, but they have named Arbroath, Ayr and St Mirren. So you're seeing it's going across a variety of the leagues. An interesting point to be made here is that they're all being called a Madri fan zone. It seems to be Madri is the sponsor of this, whether it's going to be a new partnership struck up between the SPFL and Madri over the season, if this is able to be expanded. That's the only beer that's been sold. There is soft drinks and other drinks being sold, but it's only Madri. It's very difficult to get a lot of the details on this. Arbroath seems to be an open door policy where you can enter the stadium at 11 a.m, home fans only, to 2:45, and then after 2:45 you have to leave, go in and watch the football, and then you can come back at 4:45 or when the game finishes, and you can stay till 7:30. And as Green Day 67 comes in to say, 30 degrees on Saturday, so the sales will be good there.
But I mean, let's face it, every lower league stadium is an open door policy as long as you get deep enough pockets and don't carry anything bigger than a half bottle,
Not that we can condone that on here, but yeah, pretty much. Ayr have released a special ticket for their game. It's limited to 66 fans, which is within an area of the stadium. I don't really know Somerset too well. It's £35 for a match ticket, and that includes 5 pints of Madri or 5 drinks. You get 4 of them before the game, and you get 1 at half time. There's nothing at full time there.
Right.
I mean, it seems to be common sense here, Liam. There was a friendly last night. Hibs were playing a team from Germany, and there was a clip I seen on TikTok this morning, and the German fans were chanting, "We want beer, we want beer," and it is ridiculous to think that everywhere around Europe you can have a drink in the stadium, but Scottish football's stuck in the dark ages.
I mean, obviously, totally different culture, totally different thing. But last year I went to the Japanese Cup final, Vissel Kobe against Gamba Osaka. Ideguchi was man of the match that day for Vissel, actually. But they had beer, alcohol, spirits, anything you wanted on sale before, during the game. Not so much after the game, but that's because everybody just kind of leaves the stadium quite quickly after the game. That's kind of the culture. There isn't any hospitality areas as such. It's all just kind of like fans are all kind of in together. But, I think that entire day going to and from the stadium and being in the stadium, I saw a grand total of 3 police officers, and 2 of them were directing traffic. Right? It's like, if you just let people relax and enjoy the game, it's, so much of the aggression and the anger that comes from people is, one, they hammer it far too quickly before the game because they know they can't drink during the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people are just aggressive with a drink in them. That's the reality of it, right? Some people just shouldn't drink. And then there is the other idea that people, they feel as if they're being bossed in and out of the stadium. They're being like herded like cattle, which breeds resentment. And I think if you just let people relax, let them have a beer, it's just, I mean, yeah, right. I see the point. We don't we don't have to put up with Sevco in Japan, so it's easy, right? Fair point, Strangelove. Point well made. But look, if this is done on a club by club basis, then let it be like that. If a club trials this and they show that they can behave, then let them run with it. If they can't behave, don't let them run with it. I'm sick and tired of this thing about, it's not just alcohol, it's football and football fans in general being tarred with this brush because maybe like 2 or 3% of them are troublemakers.
Yep.
I'm sick of it. If people who can't handle their drink are going to start a fight, whether it's in the pub, whether it's in the stadium, or whether it's outside, that's going to happen. That's society, right? Mm-hmm. But why should the 97% be deprived of having a pint and enjoying the game just because of those 3% of idiots?
And I've been to a couple of games down south. I've been to Anfield, and the way it works down there is you can drink it in the concourse. I think that's the way it works for all English stadiums, is that you can only drink it in the concourse and you can't take it back to your seat. I've been to Tranmere Rovers, and they've got a pub inside the stadium that you can go to. In fact, we were there for a stag do, and I think most of the boys spent the whole first half in the pub, and that kind of sums up the standard of League One football in England. But yeah, I mean, it's almost as if this is a wonderful thing for Scottish football, and it should just be the way it is. It's something that happened coming up now for 45 years ago, and we're still in that age where, as people are saying here in the comments, and I'm going through it, is Get a Grip says there's alcohol in every stadium. There's Buckfast galore up at where they stay, where they are. JJI says alcohol never stopped. They sell it to you if you sit in the fancy seats. It's almost a classism in Scottish football. It's daft. I mean, if it means that you bring in a fan zone to start this going, then that's the way it is. If they're going to start serving it at the stalls at Celtic Park, I really hope that it becomes a self-serve thing and not having to wait because it's long enough to try and get a pie at halftime, never mind trying to get a pint. But it's exciting to see a development that hopefully takes Scottish football into the 21st century.
Yeah, there is no Buckfast in Japan, I'm afraid, underwater cabbage salesman. But if you know where I can get some, please let me know.
Deku says here, every time I buy a Coke from Celtic Park, it ends up with Bacardi in it. Not sure how. Magic. Well, Jesus turned water into wine and Deku turned Coke into Bacardi and Coke. It's so impressive.
That's a drink I've not had for a while, Bacardi. You don't really get that out here.
It has been a pleasure, Liam, sharing today's podcast with you, as it's been a pleasure hosting over the last few days whilst Paul has been away on holiday. I'll bring John Shirley's comment up. Is Paul John Dykes on holiday again? I'm sorry, guys. Acsom isn't the same if Paul John Dykes isn't on it. I know you like stepping in for him, but he's no there. And then I've got a headache trying to read the rest of it. He's not here to answer your queries or questions. Well, John, to cheer you up, Paul will be back very soon. He's travelling home. He may be on tomorrow. You may see him on Saturday. Hopefully that puts a smile on your face. Just like this comment from Pat O put a smile on mine. First time Donovan has scored since Kylie chucked him. We'll finish on that today. It's been a pleasure hosting the Acsom Bulletin. Thank you very much to the 1,300 of you that watched today's. If you have watched, leave some nice comments below. Subscribe, follow. Liam, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back very soon. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.